Hey everybody, welcome to Impact Theory. You're here because, like me, my friends, you believe that human potential is nearly limitless, but you know that having potential is not the same as actually doing something with it. So our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that are going to help you actually execute on your dreams. All right, today's guest was born with a heart defect that required 2 open heart surgeries to correct, but he refused to let that slow him down, and proving that you can overcome any obstacle through hard-ass work, he is now the most decorated snowboarder on the planet. Intensely driven, he turned pro in snowboarding at the ripe old age of 13 and turned pro in skateboarding by 17. He's the youngest rider to ever win the US Open, is the only rider to ever score a perfect 100 on the super pipe in the X Games. He's won 2 Olympic gold medals and a record-breaking 15 X Game gold medals. He's won 10 ESPY awards, is the only athlete to win gold medals in both the Summer and Winter X Games, and he reached number 2 on Business Week's list of the 100 most powerful athletes, which honestly isn't too surprising given that he's partnered with some of the biggest brands around, and he's designed massively successful apparel lines and other goodies for the likes of Burton, Oakley, and Target. He's also an accomplished musician whose band Bad Things has played the main stage at Lollapalooza and toured the world with 30 Seconds to Mars. And to prove he has relevance well beyond sports, he's also established himself as a top-shelf entrepreneur. He now owns a stake in Mammoth Resorts, is the majority shareholder of 20-year-old snowboarding and music festival Air and Style. He's launched a men's fashion line with Macy's called White Space and wound up on the cover of Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2016. Please help me in welcoming the passionate philanthropist who works extensively with charities including the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the man who has his own snowboards, skateboards, clothing lines, and video game, the Shauntrepreneur himself, the unstoppable Shaun White.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure.
What an intro, all right.
Hey. The good news is with you, it was about trimming down. I was like, God, I can't even begin to fit all the things that you've done.
Busy guys sometimes.
Which is actually a perfect place to start. So give us a sense, why not just focus on one thing? So not only do you do multiple sports, but you're really, really active as an entrepreneur.
You know, it's strange. I've always just kind of like had my eyes open to what was around me, you know, and things would just like come in and out of my life, and it was up to me to really dig deeper on those if it felt right, or just kind of, you know, pass and move on to the next thing. You know, like music, for example, that was something that just kind of came to me. I was competing at the X Games. I won the slopestyle event and the half pipe, which made me the athlete of the games, you know, which they called me. And you win a guitar and you win a car as the prize. Oh. And I remember thinking like, sick. Let's drive the car. You know, I'm thinking about this guitar, and you know, randomly, you know, I'd won this guitar, and then my brother was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start playing guitar. That'd be cool." And then some kids in my neighborhood, and I'm thinking to myself, "Wait a minute, I have a guitar," and it was a great guitar. It was a Fender Strat, American made, and I called my buddy who actually brought the guitar home from Colorado for me, and picked it up, started playing, and fell in love with playing. And then the competitor in me was like, "You know what? I want to do this. Like, no one knows, and I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to train just as hard as I would train on a snowboard or something else, because maybe one day in the future I could actually be in a band. And wouldn't it be cool to pick up a guitar and be able to really play like a true musician?" And so that was kind of my long-term goal, and I would play and play and play, and then the time came where I actually made friends in music. I joined a band, and we put out an album and toured. Yeah.
Wow. Talk to me about A, using competition, but then B, like what it looks like to train the way that you train, like stretching your fingers on long flights and picking the seam of your jean. I mean, it's just incredible stories.
It's a very simple thing in my mind when I look at it. It's kind of like you just, I mean, it sounds lame, but it's like you just do what's hard until it's not hard anymore. I mean, I remember playing guitar and I couldn't up-pick, you know, I could only play like, you know, punk rock songs because you just down-pick the chords and whatnot. And so I would sit on the airplane, like you said, and I would upstroke the seam of my pant and like listen to the music that was playing and kind of like play along with it with the pick in my hand, and then it became easy to do it, and I slowly got past that hurdle, and then a whole nother genre of music opened up for me, and that was it. You know, even even when it came to snowboarding, there were certain things that were very difficult to get past. And I just remember doing it until it became easy. You know, it's like if you broke your hand and you weren't used to riding with that hand, and then you're forced to, you know, ride or to use chopsticks or to do something. Once you do it enough, it becomes, you know, a casual thing to do. So
here's what I find fascinating, though, and I hope that people will hear in your story. So there's a whole genre of medicine to deal with people who, let's say, they hurt their back.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I had a neck virus. Where you get a cold or something and then the virus settles into the muscle. This is how they explained it to me. I'm actually tempted to believe this is bullshit. But nonetheless,
it's like, sounds rough.
The effect of it was I was like this for like a week and a half, right? And every time I try to move, I'd get this massive spasm in my neck. And the doctor said, okay, here's what's crazy. If you don't force yourself to fight through that and like ultimately get your neck back upright, he's like, there are people who've lived, 20, 30 years and they never get out of that position because they become so afraid of the pain. So most people don't break their hand and get good at the left, right? They just stop and they wait until they heal, or they may never get that good again. Mm-hmm. When did you realize like that you could do that? When did you fall in love with pushing yourself to do that?
Yeah. I would say through sports. At a young age, I was like, a lot of angst, and I wanted to do things, and that's where snowboarding came along, and it gave me that outlet. And it was fun and it was cool in the beginning, and then my parents were like, oh, maybe he's pretty good at it. People around the mountain are telling them I was pretty good, and so they put me into a competition, and it was a race, and I won. I was pretty fast, and so
this is like at 7.
Yeah,
right?
like 6, 7, and I'd skied at 4. If you call it skiing, I basically I wasn't allowed poles because I would hit people. I was like really into the Ninja Turtles, and I was just like I had moves. I thought I had moves, and so yeah, I ended up not allowed poles, and then I would just go into the trees, and they'd lose me, and they'd be all worried about where I was and what would happen, and so they're like, oh, we'll put him on a snowboard. He'll be falling. We'll keep track of him. It'll be great. And so obviously I figured it out pretty quickly. And then they put me in a competition at the local resort up at Snow Summit, and I won, and that gave me this wow, I could win something, and then it gave me the the passion to work hard at something, to keep winning. Once you get that taste of victory, and you're like, wow, well maybe, I want to keep going on this path. I think that was where it stemmed from. And then the other huge component, which I'm sure if you read any other sports book or anything, it was I have an older brother, 7 years older than me, so a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot smarter, and he was always beating me at everything I did. Everything. Monopoly, chess, anything, the video games, the snowboarding, everything. He was just always winning, and I just couldn't beat him. And, I just kept at it, and I finally crossed that barrier where I was actually learning the tricks he was learning at the time, but he's 7 years older. So, in my age division, it was just, no contest. And so that's what kind of stemmed that whole me turning pro at 13, because I was already ready for, the next level.
Do you think about the birth order of you and your brother and sisters at all in sort of what ends up becoming your persona in snowboarding, and just that you got as good as you did?
I don't know. I think I got to learn from them. So even with my brother and sister, it was oh wow, well my brother chose this path. I'm going to do this.
That's interesting. And I think one of the most fascinating things about you is how uniquely you have carved your way through it. And if you don't mind, it's obviously a very famous story in your lore, but just quickly, when all the guys decided they'd gone partying and they wanted to just split the winnings from the race, but that didn't make sense for you because of you had to pay your own way.
Yeah, I was 15 years old, and I flew to Japan to do this big competition called the Toyota Big Air. And I remember getting there. I'm pretty sure the way it worked out is the specific invited riders got a little bit of money to show up, and then obviously there's great prize money, and you had maybe 3 or 4 days of practice. And I was 15, so my mom's there, and I was paying out of my own travel to get the flights, to get the food, to get the hotel, and all these things. I remember sitting there, and it's the game day. We're supposed to hit the jump, and everyone's complaining, which is like music to my ears because I'm having the best day ever. And you know, yeah, the guys had gone out. We're in Japan. There's a lot of fun things to do. And I was like in my room with my mom, like doing my algebra or whatever. And I'm like, all right, well, you guys go have fun. I'm gonna, do my schoolwork. And so, anyways, long story short, they all got together and were like, we're gonna split the prize money for the competition. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, like doing the quick math, I'm like, this doesn't even cover the flights out once you split it up among all the riders and whatnot. And I said no. I was 15, I was like, no, I want to compete. And they just sat there and hazed me. And there was like this board of like all the riders' faces for who was at the competition. And they took turns like drawing dollar signs on my eyes and doing whatnot. And I just remember being like, I'm not going to succumb to the like, pure pressure of this. Like I came here to compete, I'm feeling great, and I stuck to my, gut feeling there, and I won. I won $50,000 in a car. But yeah, it was a time where I just kind of like stuck to it, and that was a big win for me. And that was kind of the first realization that I didn't have to follow the pack. I didn't have to do what everyone else said because it's what they want or what they should do or what you're supposed to do. I just kind of felt like, you know what, this is a point where I should make a stand. I should really be me and own it, and I did, and I won. It was pretty wild. So
that's amazing.
Me, yeah.
The reason I really wanted you to share that story is, in no uncertain terms, when I was 15, I would have crumbled. I'd have been like, I would have so wanted them to like me that even if I had said no at first, about the time they start drawing the dollar signs on my eyes, like what gave you, was it having won in the past? Was it fights with your brother? Like, what gave you the ability to go, I idolize these guys. Yeah. They're now really being mean. Yeah. And so how did you stay the course at that point?
I don't know. I remember it being harsh, and they were lighthearted and joking in a way, but I know that deep down they were like pretty pissed. That was the only one like, no, we're going to ride. So I just remember thinking like, this could be my chance to win, and I'm not going to let these guys take that from me. And I just stuck to it. And I remember just putting my headphones on and doing anything to distract myself, because nothing's going to slow down the clock on when we need to do the competition. But it was definitely like a defining moment for me to stand up for myself and what I wanted to accomplish.
What's the nature of competition for you? Like, what does competition mean?
It's a multiple of things. I mean, it's a chance to, I guess, go out and show, the hard work that's been put in, and to kind of display it for everyone. Your chance to show off in a way, and in another way, it's a chance to access some deep part of yourself that is going to do something you never thought you could do or would want to do. And I have trouble now that I'm gotten a little bit older. I've just turned 30, and unfortunately, you think more. I feel like I'm like, it's pretty icy today. It's a little windy. I feel like tomorrow. And now I got the weather report. I'm like, it's gonna be better tomorrow. We should definitely come back tomorrow. And like procrastinating, but like, it's your chance to do something great, and I strive for those moments, and I wish I could recreate them in the normal life setting, because it changes from I want to do this new trick to I have to do this new trick. And it's the best because it takes that seed of doubt out of your mind, and once that doubt is gone, like, if I asked you to jump over the table or something, and you were like gonna practice it, and then we're like, all right, we're gonna film this one. You're like, I better make it. You know what I mean? Like, and you're expected to jump over the table, and it's gonna happen. So what are you gonna do to best prepare yourself? And that's kind of that motivation of like getting to the contest and throwing the big tricks and seeing your competition and that motivation. And I've always loved that. Where, interesting enough, the dynamic in my family was my brother, extremely talented guy, amazing on a snowboard, could do any trick you could think of, but you put a camera on him or you put him in a contest scenario, he couldn't do it. He just, like, the pressure and the kind of awkwardness of like, all right, go, sort of thing. And I remember I was slightly the opposite, where I would do all right in practice, and then they're like, all right, it's contest time, and I would do better. And so I know that, like, I have that in me. So I've always
loved, cultivate?
I think over time it just became so. You get used to, like, if you hate speaking in public and you gotta talk and make speeches all the time, you're gonna get comfortable at it. Just like us talking now. Like, I used to look back at my interviews and I was terrified, and I was like, well, why was that such a bad interview? Well, because you're not thinking about your answer. You're talking and then trying to steer it where you want to go. And I learned from that, and then try it again the next time. In an interview, you realize you're in the driver's seat of where you want to go with the answers. You could kind of ask anything, but I could kind of tell what I want to say in a way, but that's the funny thing. But you learn these things over time. So if you can imagine, obviously I've been competing since I was 6 years old. And, you develop these rhythms in the way you go about it. And so I know that when I get to the contest, like, this is going to happen. And you can bank on those moments. But that's really what competition is for me. It's a way to really tap something in me that I don't normally get. I was at the X Games, and in my run, I broke an old record, and I went 24 feet out of the 22-foot half pipe. So I was up there, and it was funny because I wasn't going that big all day, but it was the contest time, and I was jacked up, and I dropped in, and I hit that marker. And I recently broke that record at the US Open of Snowboarding in Vail last season. I went 26 feet. It just kind of comes out of you, and you do better. So that's what competition is for me, for sure.
All right, so if your brother Jesse came to you and said, all right, so I really do feel like I'm gifted, talented, but I don't do as well with the pressure. Teach me. What would be like a couple things that you would know right away? I've got to get him to understand this, do this, pre-visualize, like whatever.
Yeah, visualize, definitely. That's kind of the thing for me. It's always been like, well, what's it going to look like, and what's it going to feel like, and what am I going to be wearing, and every little detail. And visualize yourself winning. Like, what are you going to do after? You just project it, and it happens. And I've always kind of like set goals for myself. That's a huge one. Set the goal of, like, what do you really want to do? Like, what is it in the end? For me, I would always set up like a fun goal and then like a serious goal. So one year, one of the goals was like, how many cars can I win? Because like the snowboard contest would give out cars if you won the series. So, obviously, like, yeah, winning the series is amazing. That's a feat of its own, but I broke it down to, like, I just got to win the cars. You know what I mean? It made it into this stupid sort of game where it dumbed it down slightly,
Does that help alleviate the pressure?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, obviously you have serious goals of, like, I want to win the Olympics, and then I want to see how many cars I can win, and it made it this fun thing of, like, taking a little bit of the edge off, because it's such a daunting task when you look at it from, like, wow, I'm going to try to win the Olympics. Like, it's such a big thing, and then you really kind of break it down into these smaller things. It's more edible that way. And
did you come to stuff like that naturally, or was it like you knew I need to manage my mind, which is what I hear as you talk through this stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if I knew what I was doing. I mean, now that I'm a bit older, I kind of see the I can break it down for what was happening, but it just felt like there was so much pressure. Like, man, like, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, and it just felt like there was so much weight on it, and I would always kind of turn it to my favor. So any which way you spin it, I'm winning in a way. Like, if you look at a competition like this last X Games I went to, like, I didn't win, but I really feel like I won because I know exactly what I need to work on now. I know exactly what happened and I did wrong and I got to go back, and that's why it's still winning to me. Where if I did win, I think about it like, wow, well, I'm exactly on the path I'm supposed to be going. The training and the ideas I've had before working, and this is where you go. So it's not like, even those slight step backs are actually, to leap forward in a way. Because how are you going to know where you lay in the whole, field of things and what's going on? It's to take a step back and then go, okay, you reassess, refocus. And even I was talking to some people in the green room, and they were talking about Russia calling. I watched that and I was like, man, okay, like, that wasn't right. Like, it didn't normally play out that way. I'm going to change that for this next time, or I'm going to do this and that. So if you're always kind of looking to better the situation, and I've been to contests before where I really wanted to win and I put everything on the line for that event and I didn't win. And I went like, man, you put too much pressure on it. you did this, you did that. There's such thing as over practicing too. A lot of guys show up at the competitions and there's 2 hours to ride, and they're the first one there at the gate. They ride 2 hours, and then, they landed their run, 15 perfect runs, and then they get to the contest and they fall. I'm like, yeah, because you just nailed it 15 times. It's like rolling dice. You're gonna hit 7, like you're gonna crap out, and save it for the real contest. Like you got it. You gotta be your own friend in that scenario.
I really hope, dear listeners, that you paid attention to that, because here's what's powerful in that, and here's why I think that you're gonna have unprecedented success for an athlete in your after career as an entrepreneur, because all the mental tricks that you're using in sport are exactly what you're going to have to do in business. So in business, you're going to get your ass handed to you. I'm sure you already have, and that's only going to keep continuing. Yeah. Right? It's the natural part of it, right?
But you learn.
Exactly.
Well, that didn't work.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when you're saying that, I went to the X Games, I didn't win, but I feel like I did win because I know how to frame that in my mind, and I know how to look at that as, okay, now I'm going to assess. And if you had said, and I was actually really afraid you were going to say, if I had won, it wouldn't have been as good. But you didn't. You said if I had won, then I would know, okay, cool, you're on the right path. Like, you're going to make a win out of it either way, right? So there's a great book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn.
Okay.
And if that's your mentality,
great,
right, then you can never really lose because you're playing a much longer game than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's like, I always tell people, think of life as practice. So I came into competition very late. So my sister was really good at basketball. She's really good at every sport. Unlike you, who got better than your brother, I did not get better than my sister.
Okay.
So I tried to do all the things that she was good at. I was terrible at them because I had a fixed mindset. I didn't believe that I could go practice and get better. Like it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Practice time was just facing my inadequacies over and over and over.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to compute that, hey, if I do this, that I'll actually progress and get better, and then I can really. So as an adult, though, I found that. And business became that for me, that, hey, if I treated this like practice, that I'm really just trying to get good, and that over a long enough timeline, this will add up to something, then while other people are freaking out about a lost deal, about blowing a meeting, about not getting hired or fired, or whatever the case may be, they're not looking at it on a long enough timeline. Because I'm thinking, I totally screwed that meeting up, but what did I learn? I learned this. Now I have that skill set. I can go on and get better. And the reason I was asking you to define competition, for me, competition is being tested. I want to be tested. Now, I didn't when I was younger because I just assumed I would fail. But once you believe you're in control of whether or not you win, then competition becomes intoxicating, because it's a moment where now it isn't just practicing snowboarding down the mountain over and over. Like, there's something real that this is working towards. There's going to be a moment of immense pressure, and I get to see, am I better than everybody?
Yeah, of course. No, it's true though. In that moment of like, well, I put in the work, and it's the actual, like, that's what you're going for. And yeah, you said in business you can fail here and there, and it's the same idea of like trying something over and over and just finally cracking the code on it. And then once you get that win, you get that experience and know that you can succeed. It's that like I said in competition, that seed of doubt goes away, and you show up to win every time. That's the only option. And once that's the only option, it's even more obtainable.
Say that again. It's even more obtainable. What do you mean by that? Because that's so true.
Yeah, it's just in the air. You put it out there. It's just like you just feel it, and you're like, wow. Well, I know back to the table.
Thank God this is here. Where would we be, Shaun?
A lot of metaphors. But if I asked you to do a feat and you actually accomplished it, you have that knowledge now going back to do it again. Well, I've already jumped over this, or I've already done this thing in business, and it's old news, and you go in with even more confidence than you had that it took to win the first time. So, you have that in you, and projecting that positive thing always just leads to better outcomes either way, and even with pressure as well, when people say like, how do you deal with the pressure? And I'm just so thankful for the pressure, like they're like, everybody thinks you're gonna win the Olympics. And I go, well, if everybody thinks I'm gonna win, that's great. Like that's a lot of people believing in me, thinking that I can do it. Hey, maybe I just might be able to do it. If you, instead of letting it weigh me down, like, oh my God, all these people are expecting this from me, and I'm expecting this from myself, and it's just too much. I can't handle, like, no, it's such it's a blessing. It's a great thing to have people counting on you and needing that. And it's all kind of leading up to that sort of like, you can win. You've felt it before. You know what's obtainable. Everybody else believes in you. It's like your team rather than letting it weigh you down. So if you can kind of put that subtle spin on things and use it to your advantage is always a better scenario, and I've let the pressure get to me before, and it just, well, that didn't work. I was terrified this to happen, and you learn from that and you go on. But yeah, there's always lessons to be learned. Even learning tricks, it's the basic thing. It's like a math problem. You're throwing solutions at it, and you finally, the numbers work, and it clicks, and it works out. Same with snowboarding and jumps, and learning a new trick. You learn the very important lesson and simple lesson of what not to do. And hey, I tried this. You watch the video. I took off wrong. I'm going to try it again and again and again and again. And you get to a point where you get the confidence, you get the muscle memory, you get the ability to then do that trick, and now it's yours. And then you can do it at a competition when it really matters. The practice, like you said, it's something you kind of get over time.
So when you were doing the build-up for the Sochi Olympics and you were trying to learn the new trick, and obviously in the documentary it was so cool, which by the way, like I don't know how you felt about making that available to the public. Like you were so raw and so vulnerable, admitting that I've never had a roadblock like this, I've never been afraid to try something like this. As somebody watching the documentary, that was so powerful for me to know that somebody who you look up to and admire and think they've just done something inhuman, that it's more interesting to me that you had to overcome that than if you just, if it was just easy for you, like that's not inspiring.
Here's the winning run.
Right? Exactly.
Totally.
But to see the fight. So how did you, in that specific example, how did you deal with the fear? Because when you had crashed, dude, that shit looked like it was going to break you in half.
Yeah. Yeah, I took a bad spill. I mean, I basically, if that were a competition, I would have landed it because I had to. I dropped in and I went to do that trick, and I was doing I don't know if you've seen, there's a video of me attempting the first triple flip in the half pipe. And you can watch the video, and I do the one rotation, everything's great. I do the second rotation, and then halfway through the third, I decide that I don't want to do a third flip. And I open up, and that's kind of like, it slows your rotation down. It changes things, and that mindset got in there, and I decided like, oh, I'm nervous about this. I opened up, and I caught the lip of the half pipe. Now the wall's 22 feet tall, so I then bounced off of the lip and flew to the bottom of the half pipe. My helmet came off. It's actually a pretty spectacular crash.
It's
like
spectacular.
The goggles come off of my helmet, and then the lenses come out of the goggles. It's bad. And so, there's all my stuff everywhere, and I don't know if you've ever been concussed before, but it's a very surreal thing. Like, I wasn't in any pain. I was just sitting there like, wow, this is that moment that I dreamt about. Like, it's like a deja vu sort of feeling of like, I've been here before. Of like, I swear. And I just remember going, wow, this is that moment. Like, this sucks. Like, okay. And I remember going to the hospital, getting all checked out, and I had slightly separated my shoulder, and my pelvis was all bent out of shape, and I had a bit of a concussion from it. But yeah, I mean, going back to doing that again, yeah, I had to look at the video and think about what I did and what I could have done differently. And something happened though that kind of saved me right in the middle of it, is that, and I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, because it kind of steered me from my path, but another competitor of mine created a new trick. He deemed it the YOLO flip. You only live once. Yes. Flip, I guess. And so he created this new trick, and I'm like, oh, well, I have to do this trick. And it really inspired me. I learned his trick first try, like 3 days later. Wow. I was that motivated to do it because I saw a competitor, and he was, and I knew it could be done because he did it, and well, why can't I do it? And it really kind of paved the way for it, rather than doing something that had never been done before. And so, to create that excitement, that pressure, and to look at it like this year, I've decided to do every single competition that I can enter, just because I know that getting to that pressure scenario when I was younger, I didn't think as much. I would just throw my tricks and that was it. But nowadays I need that extra motivation, that coaxing into it. And to get rid of that seed of doubt, I show up at contests now. So it's kind of like knowing yourself as well, and knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, and kind of sticking to that. Like, what are you really good at and what are you not? And being real and honest with yourself about it. There's a difference between like working hard at something that you're not good at and forcing it. And that's kind of the inner question you have to ask. But I've always found that to be kind of a truth for me. You know?
What drives you now? You've accomplished so much, it's absurd. I mean, writing your intro was a matter of how do you trim things out, right? Because just your list of accomplishments is ridiculous.
Thank you.
So it's dangerous, dude. Like what you do is dangerous. So how do you push yourself to like keep pushing, stay relevant, to really progress the sport when it's like, I'm Shaun White, bitches.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you?
That's what it says on my car. Yeah. You saw me pull in, huh? How do I stay motivated? You know, man, it's a mixture of things. It's like, you know, there's always new goals. There's always new things to do. Obviously, you know, when it comes to snowboarding, going to an Olympics and not doing well, obviously at Sochi, not getting the gold and all that, like, man, extremely motivating, extremely eye-opening. I'd never gone to an Olympics and not won. That was the first time for me. I was like, wow, how do I feel about this? Well, what happens after? And it was amazing for me to realize that people were still like, oh, you're the champ. You're the guy, you know, and I don't know, for some reason, I just like in my mind, I just assumed that if you don't win, they immediately strip all the other medals and you're just some guy, or like the superpowers are gone and you're just like the dude in the glasses at work. Like I was like, oh no, you know, and I just remember feeling like this overwhelming, like, wow, I'm still alive. I'm still here. Like the worst thing I could have imagined happened and I was still here. I was still considered, you know, the great in the sport. And it did a lot for me personally. I was like, wow, I can actually, like, I can lose. And I hadn't lost. I mean, this like reign of like me winning, it's been a long thing. And obviously that was just like one night, one contest, but the world was watching. So it was pretty rough to lose. But you realize that, yeah, it's just that one moment and you got to get back up. And that's the true spirit of the sport, is to come back. And it's like Rocky. He didn't even win the first movie. You know, it's like the thrill of the fight to get there, and you become, you know, part of the US team, the Olympics and all that. And it's such an amazing and memorable thing. And then to actually go and compete. But the bounce back from that was amazing. And I remember sitting there thinking, instead of like curling up and like, all right, maybe I should, you know, yeah, they're saying I'm getting older, maybe I should quit, or maybe you know, and I didn't want to quit. I was just like put in my head so many times by the media that I was like, they're comparing me to like a 14-year-old. And I'm like, well, of course, I'm going to look a lot older. This kid's 14, you know? But you start hearing it so much, you kind of believe it. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, like, well, I don't feel that way and I'm not done and I don't want to be done. And obviously there's other things in my life that were capturing my attention at that time. But I don't know, the thrill was still there and I had newfound motivation from not winning. And I remember thinking, you know, from our wins and lessons sort of scenario, I was like, wow, well, what's to learn from this? And how do I better myself? And I sat there thinking, I actually probably said it out loud to some friends. I'm like, I'm going to do more than I've ever done after an Olympics. Wow. This time around. Because normally what happens is you get this kind of flood of like, hey, you know, this company wants to endorse you. You're the Olympic gold medalist and blah, blah, blah. And you totally deserve to do that. You won, and it's kind of like the quick money that comes your way. And before the world turns around, it's off to the next thing. And I wasn't getting those floods of offers. I was getting offers still, but it wasn't like the quick, you know, gold rush sort of scenario. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? What do I truly want to do? And since that Olympics, I mean, in business, man, I no longer ride for a mountain. I'm a part owner in a mountain resort, Big Bear Snow Summit and Mammoth Mountain. And I still compete, but I now own my own competition series, music festival series. I've changed my boys' clothing line to a men's clothing line because it fits my, you know, vibe of who I am today, not who I was before.
Do you know Michael Strahan? NFL Hall of Famer, Good Morning
Michael,
America.
yeah, of course.
He talked about
Show.
that like if you want to have longevity in a career, at some point you have to get really serious about your training.
Yeah.
And a lot of NFL guys have talked about you don't bulk up as you go longer in the NFL. You actually start getting leaner, meaner, tighter.
Oh, wow.
Jerry Rice, who had one of the most unbelievably high-performance, long-lasting careers, worked out like a demon his whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Terrell Owens, who we've had on the show.
Wow.
Same thing, right? Work
Yeah.
ethic, like really treating your body like a tool. Like that's the weapon with which you're
Yeah.
going to win the war. So it'll be really fascinating. I'll put a chip that if you keep up with that, like that'll magnify your. And you love Agassi.
I do, yeah. Which
crushed
was
it
interesting to see. I read his book Open, which was amazing. But yeah, it was funny to see in his career because I was always comparing. Obviously, you read the book. I'm like comparing my life to his, and the one thing is that he never really enjoyed tennis because like everything was tennis for him. And once he found that his life wasn't tennis, it was his wife and his foundation, his family. And then he would go out on the court. He was more dangerous because he had that slight bit of like, well, I don't care. Like I'm, like that feeling I got after losing. Like, wow, I'm still here. I'm still alive. My dog still likes me. Like my, my house isn't taken away. Like, you know what I mean? And so he became a even greater tennis player than he was. I felt like, at least maybe my recollection of the book, but I was comparing that to my life, and I always felt like snowboarding's been a part of it's not me, it's not my life. Like it's what I do for fun, and it's what I do competitively, but it's not who I am. And so I've always felt that way.
I mean, it certainly answers the question of why you've done so many diverse things in your career, from music, which, I mean, you take it seriously, man. Like, you're not a dabbler. Like, you're a full-blown rock guitar player. I mean, it's crazy. So when because I didn't know a lot about the music side of you when I was researching. So when you were like, I went on tour with 30 Seconds to Mars, I was like, like, that's for real.
Yeah, it was heavy. And I've always loved that about music, that there wasn't really a competition. It was more you just create and you keep doing that and you keep trying to better your craft. And then within that, there's a team element. Because I remember standing there and I was like, man, it was our first show. And I got on stage and I was like, okay, I gotta do this. I was like talking to myself. And everyone laughed and looked at me and they're like, no, we got to do this, because like you can play you play the guitar all you want, but unless I'm on time and everybody else does their thing, and it really kind of was an amazing thing that we were all there together, and that's something I never really had in snowboarding because it was always like I'm gonna practice today and this and that and whatnot, but yeah, a really amazing time with the music. It gave me a lot of appreciation for that lifestyle and the amount of work that goes into it. I mean, even Jared. Gosh, to see the levels of like we were playing dive bars to like a festival to seeing a guy like sell out an arena was just incredible. And the amount of effort that goes into it, and night after night doing the same show and bettering it, and the guy's learning bits and pieces of every language from whatever part of the world he's playing, and it was just incredible to see, very inspiring. So
yeah, it's interesting. So having been to his house, the way that he has everything laid out so that he can maximize his time. He's got like 3 companies operating out of his house, which tells you something about the size of his house, which is an old military base.
It's an old base.
Which is crazy.
He's on another level.
Very much so. It's incredible.
I thought I worked a lot. I was like, man, this guy's...
You do work a lot, though.
I do.
How do you think about time management?
That's been a real tough one for me because... I guess going to traditional school setting, you learn to manage your time from this class and, I want to go to the mall tonight. So I'm going to, I never really had that. I was always just like in a van with my parents, like going to the next competition and doing whatnot. And so as I got older, that was something that took a lot of time, and I'm still pretty terrible at it. I have a really great assistant, that's when you realize, to any great person you see, there are people around helping because you can't do it all. It's just too much. And you got to know your strengths and your weaknesses. And I'm like, I'm terrible at scheduling, and I can't accomplish all these things I want to do without somebody coming in to help. And so that's where you got to rely on people around you in that sense.
It's interesting because for somebody who has so many things going on, usually the first thing to go are details, but you're actually super focused on the details. I know for the white space, you hand painted 150 motorcycle jackets.
Yeah.
Why was that important enough for you to put it was like 5 days locked in a warehouse?
I think, what's funny is that, and when everybody looks at the thing, well, he's, if you broke up my time, you would think that I'm like, well, he's 50% this and then 10% that and whatnot. No, I'm 100% everything. So it's like, it gets my full attention. And the jackets, for example, like we came up with this great idea to, I was sitting around with some friends and I was like, man, we should like do really cool custom painted leather jackets, and we'll do kind of like a, if you're the right person on the right day and you show up to a Macy's, you'll be one of 150 that will get the chance to buy these like leather jackets that I hand painted. The details that I missed is that I don't paint. I don't paint.
That's worth considering.
I was like, and I was like, this is a great idea. And then it dawned on me that like I didn't really have a concept of, what I wanted the visuals on the jacket to look like and whatnot. And so I started calling some artist friends of mine. I'm like, okay, it'll be a mixture of this and that. And then the perfectionist in me was like, we started painting some jackets and I stumbled upon a design that I really liked. And then I was like, this is it. This is the aesthetic I want to do. And then I went back and like with a couple friends that helped help fan and dry the jackets and hang them up around the studio that we had. I painted all those jackets myself. Wow. We spent about 5 days and nights in the warehouse there in downtown LA. So every single thing that has brought me to this place has been like a long play. I just kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, I was just like, my eyes were open enough to see the opportunities at hand.
Your eyes were open enough to see the opportunities, which is incredible. That notion of, I'm going to put the word in your mouth, flow, that you're almost moving through these business opportunities with the grace that you show, when you're skating or snowboarding, which is pretty incredible. But you also have the balls to pull the trigger. And that's where a lot of people fall down. They maybe see the opportunity, but they don't actually have the vision of what they want to do with it or the guts to do it, to actually buy into it. Or if they buy into it, they don't spend the 5 days locked in, the warehouse painting on the jacket though. And that really, to me, like, that's where so many entrepreneurs fall apart is at the end of the day, only action matters, right? All right, I've got one more question for you, but first, tell these guys where they can find you and definitely tell them about Aaron Style, because we're like right around the corner.
Aaron Style, it is happening this February 18th and 19th at the Coliseum in downtown LA. Really amazing bands are coming. We've got Flume, Major Lazer, Vince Staple, YG, TV on the radio. And then we're building a 16-story snowboard jump where the world's best are going to come and compete. All happening this February. You go to aaronstyle.com and get your tickets, and I'll see you there.
Nice.
That's the next one.
All right, cool. So my last question, what is the impact that you want to have on the world?
Impact. Like I touched on in the beginning, is that snowboarding is a part of my life, but it's definitely not my life and all that I am. And so I feel like my thing that I would leave is that I hope to be looked at as someone that really didn't, see the boundaries of what you should and shouldn't do, that I just kind of, I did the road less traveled, I did the things that people said couldn't be done. It's kind of the goal for me.
It's a pretty damn good thing to leave behind.
So that's it.
Awesome, Shaun, thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers.
That was incredible.
Thanks for having me.
So, guys, I hope that you took away from this man what I took away from him, which is it really doesn't matter what anybody tells you can be, what you're up against, where you start with double open heart surgery. It's all about what you're trying to become and how hard you're willing to work to get there. It is absolutely incredible the way that this man has totally bucked peer pressure. He does not fuck around with that. He has stayed true to who he is, what he wants to accomplish, and in doing that, he really has defined a totally new path from athlete to entrepreneur that I think is really inspiring. And seeing the way that he dives into the details, seeing the way that he pushes himself to grow and get better, that he looks at competition as a way to actually feel the pressure and to deal with his mind, that is the thing I found so fascinating about him, is he understands what he's doing with his mind. And that's the reason that I think he's going to become an incredible entrepreneur, and he's going to have an even more impactful career as an entrepreneur. So be sure to go check him out. He's going to blow you away. It's absolutely incredible. Guys, it's a weekly show, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.
See you.
Shaun, man, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was fucking
Awesome. Really fun.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Impact Theory. If this content is adding value to your life, our one ask is that you go to iTunes and Stitcher and rate and review. Not only does that help us build this community, which at the end of the day is all we care about, but it also helps us get even more amazing guests on here to share their knowledge with all of us. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. And until next time, be legendary, my friends.